Saturday morning, time to kick off the Experts program right here on Power Talk Radio, and that means our tech expert, Luis Alvarez, is in the house with us today. Hello, Luis.
Hey, Mark. How are you today?
Doing really well. We've got an incredible topic to discuss. This is a story that comes off of CNN, but it's been covered all across the media landscape, and that is killer robots developed as a substitute for police in San Francisco. And we call them killer robots because somebody actually designed robots that can use lethal force against humans, or I guess any living, breathing being, so maybe animals as well. But apparently San Francisco officials are kind of backtracking on this, but maybe give us a little background on how we got to where we are.
Sure. Well, law enforcement has been using robots for a long time. You see them, especially like bomb squads now, routinely use robots to go in first instead of having the guys' padded suits go in. Now the robots go in to sniff out to see if there's actually a bomb in a car or a truck or even a building. So those kind of robots have become pretty common throughout law enforcement. And as the challenges for law enforcement continue to grow, there's a growing need for using automation and robots in other areas. And one of the areas that they explored in San Francisco a couple of weeks ago was allowing robots to deploy deadly force in extreme situations. For example, think of a building that is being occupied by terrorists or a number of people with high-powered rifles, and they're afraid to send in the police themselves for fear of them getting killed. So you send in the robots and let the robots take out the bad guys. In theory, it sounds good. And so the San Francisco supervisors approved an ordinance basically making it legal for robots to kill people. And then, as you can expect, there was a bit of a blowback after that. And a lot of folks came out of the woodwork saying, are you crazy? You're allowing, this is like Terminator or RoboCop happening in real time. So they have backtracked it last week. They voted against the measure and then instead said that, the robots cannot be used to kill people or horses or dogs or any other animals. So we shall see if this continues to be the case. But I think it's also something that shows the evolution of robots and robotics and everything from our homes with robot vacuum cleaners and now potentially robots that can be used in standoffs to take down the bad guys.
Right. But in an interview last week with CNN, San Francisco's police chief, Bill Scott, he insisted the lethal function of the robots would only be used in the most desperate circumstances. He noted that robots would be operated by officers with specialized training. Luis, they always say that about these kinds of things. And then there's an abuse. And then we learn, that was outside of protocol or outside of standards. And that's a lot of times is where the opposition to this comes from is the fact that you can't make a foolproof system. And this is really, like you say, Terminator. I mean, this is like 1984 on steroids, and the state using machines to kill people rather than police because the machine doesn't have that split second, whatever it is, the thinking that you're doing when you're in that position. And it would just do it. And I mean, that's just a really scary thing. And what's also kind of really disturbing about this, but it also shows the disconnect between many elected officials and the population that they govern, to where that there were 8 supervisors on that board last week by an 8-3 vote that approved using these killer robots, that there were 8 supervisors that were so enthralled or convinced that, this is a great way to go, that they really didn't understand the gravity of what they were dealing with and how something like this would be received by the public.
Yeah, and I think that really lack of attention into how this would be interpreted is indicative of the fact that a lot of times these solutions are brought forth to deal with problems that are artificial in a way. For example, a lot of these companies that are talking to law enforcement about these kind of robots, because obviously law enforcement isn't going out there and looking for these robots. These robots are being built and are being pushed by manufacturers who say, look, this is a great way to avoid cops getting killed in circumstances like a barricaded shooter with hostages. This way you can send the robot in and it can take the brunt of the bullets and potentially take out the bad guy without any law enforcement official or officer being subjected to potentially getting killed themselves. So in theory, it sounds good, but at the end of the day, like you point out, even in the most careful of circumstances, until you can prove that these robots can actually be controlled to the degree that a human being can be controlled, it's a scary proposition. But I think it's something that we're going to see more of just because the U.S. military is already already deploying robots in combat situations. We're seeing them being used, for example, in the Ukraine war to remove people from battle scenes. So, a lot of robot vehicles are loaded up with casualties and, they then trek back into the hospitals to drop off those casualties. And so robots are becoming much more common in military circumstances, which means that's going to bleed over into law enforcement.
But at the same time, where a lot of people are opposed to using them domestically on our city streets for law enforcement, there's probably less opposition to them in a military standpoint because of the nature of war, right? When you're talking, and now, of course, you can have international tribunals or the UN that might declare that the use of robots in war is a human rights violation, or that using them amounts to a war crime. But as long as every nation possesses individual sovereignty over the affairs of their own military, good luck in trying to prosecute that type of an alleged crime. That's a very, very difficult hill to climb. Going back to the domestic use of the robots, what you could see happen in this country is in communities around the nation, you could see city councils or boards of supervisors that will come out against the use of lethal robots. And where your city council or your board of supervisors won't vote to do that, you may well see the initiative process used by citizens. Here in California, it's a very popular way of changing the law or getting a point across to politicians is to use the initiative process. And I will tell you what, if a group came forward that started a petition drive to ban the use of lethal robots in the state of California, I doubt that they would have very much trouble getting enough signatures on the petitions to get that on the ballot. And it would probably, something like that could win by over 80% at the polls.
Yeah, I mean, we've all seen all the Terminator movies,
yes.
So we don't want that world to be the world we live in. And it's a very scary thought to give autonomous robots the ability to use deadly force on human beings. So I think if anybody decided, hey, let's do a statewide initiative to ban this in California to make sure that not even a local municipality can do it, there'd be a lot of takers. I think it would pass overwhelmingly.
Sure. And then there's also the liability issue. If the software goes bad in the robot and it kills someone or the wrong person, who's then responsible to be prosecuted for that crime? Is it the officer that was operating the robot? Is it the officer's commander? Is it the company that built the robot, or the company or the person who made the software? Where do you assign blame? I mean, there are just so many unanswered questions, and probably questions you really couldn't ever answer with something like that it's just a good idea to say, no thanks, this is not somewhere where we ever need to go.
Yeah, I think we're still a ways away. We can't make cars drive themselves. I don't think we want robots deciding how and when to kill people.
Right. And the robots will be driving the cars themselves and killing people too. So that would be a rather dystopian future for all of us. All right. Luis Alvarez joining us to talk tech this Saturday morning here on Power Talk Radio. Online, it's alvareztech.com or alvareztg.com, that is. And Luis, the toll-free number for the I-Team.
Give us a call at 866-78-I-Team. That's 866-784-8326.